Hey, how's it going, sickos and the sick curious? Dieter and Jake here breaking down 49ers cut day. Hey, it's cut day, and a lot of people lost their jobs today, and we're going to talk about it as if it doesn't affect them on a personal level because we're cold callous motherfuckers. Hi, Jake. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been hot, man. It's been hot.
Yeah,
Um,
you're down on the peninsula. It's a little bit heavier for you there, but it's even hot in Alameda, and Alameda is generally cold. Um, that said, I'm wearing a sweatshirt inside because I just spilled Mountain Dew all over myself, and the
nice,
show must go on. I'm a
nice.
professional broadcaster. Okay, let's just start off with the simple question: what surprised you?
A few things. I will say number one, we got two tight ends. That did surprise me.
Just just two, just two. Don't mind the
Just
fact that you
two.
probably need three or four. Just two.
So listen. Jake Tonjes played his way onto this roster, no question about it.
Good for him.
Tonjes Hive
Just Hive.
listen.
The sickos
It's
know.
one of those. It's one of those things where at the start of training camp, there's a lot of guys where like Jake Tonjes is making some catches, and you go, "Oh, that's nice for him." But then you
Yeah,
start to mention it to other writers, and they go, "Shut up!
yeah.
Don't
Shut up
talk to me
about
about
Tom.
this guy who's not going to make the roster."
Right.
But as it went on, and the 49ers tight end room looked bleaker and bleaker, and Tonjes just kept catching everything his way and doing everything right, you're like, they actually kind of have to keep him, and they did.
Yeah.
I think the biggest surprise there was not keeping Eric Saubert, who I thought looked really good as a blocker, really capable. And
Yeah.
again, you need three tight ends. I had them keeping four, which is, I know, psychotic, but I thought they would be stubborn about like keeping Braden Willis. I don't think he deserved, the roster spot
I
based on what he did, but
So you posted a tweet, Jake, where you said that you thought that Willis had a bad camp. And I guess if we're using camp as sort of the big overarching everything camp, I agree. But like I thought he looked really good in practices. He did not look good in games. That's undeniable. And given how Kyle Shanahan talks about preseason games, I wasn't sure if that was really going to matter. He had a bad one against the Saints. There's obviously that play where Brock is telling him to do one thing and he's doing another. There's also just a general sense of confusion whenever he's on the field,
yeah,
which we've seen in big moments in the playoffs, even. But again, this is a guy who played in the playoffs. And I found it pretty jarring that the 49ers would cut him. But I'm with you. I thought Saubert was a lock to make this roster. And it's such a strange move, at least from our vantage point. I'll speak for both of us here, that I have to imagine that they're going to bring him back in to the fold in the
I would
next
suspect so.
couple days. I mean, I didn't do a count on it, but with Ambry Thomas still on this roster, which that would be my big surprise, given that he has a broken arm, that seems like he is highly likely to get cut or put on IR in a day or
Yeah,
two. And then that's a roster spot. You keep Tonjes at the Hilton, or I'm sorry, you keep, listen to me, Freudian slips. You keep Saubert at the Hilton, and then you have your three tight ends. Maybe that's the plan. But until it's executed, it's kind of hard to give them credit for something they haven't done yet. And two tight ends is maybe they can get away with it. Maybe they think Kyle Juszczyk's the third best tight end on the. It just doesn't seem like enough to me. But
yeah,
that's one man's
yeah.
advantage.
I think that was my next thing is there's IR moves to come, right? So Elijah Mitchell going on IR when
Season
he
long,
was
he's out.
no, he's not. No, he's not.
They put him on
He's
season
not.
long IR. Jake, I can
No, he's
pull up
not.
the email right now. I'm pulling it up. We're going to share it with the people. Go look at the
Yeah.
email. They put him on season
Oh, he's
long
not
IR.
designated for return.
They put him on season long IR today. If
Ooh, I
Kyle
missed that.
Shanahan and John Lynch can't have him, no one can have him. That's what the 49ers said today. He's out for the season, which, I mean, I guess skip to the end, right? Oh, he played for 4
Yep.
snaps and now is out for the.
That's
Might as well
that's
skip
my
the 5
bad.
snaps.
I am that's really shocking. I mean, so here's the thing, like people were talking about just full on cutting him, and I was
Same. That was one of our big points of conversation on the last stream, where
yeah,
it's like, why bother keeping him around? And yeah, I mean, again, this is not the final 53, and in fact,
right.
as we get more in, and I'm sure that in the next day or two, we're going to see a list of guys who got cut, and we're going to be looking at the same way the Niners are looking at it, same way the Niners have been looking at it. Every team's been looking at this and say,
To be
we should add
fair,
this guy. Yeah.
to be fair, what are the chances the Niners just like forgot to add a little star next to his name?
Um, I don't know. That's a good question.
It's just weird to wait until the day before when if you were gonna designate.
Right. Yeah, this is also a team we should note that got penalized a draft pick for bad accounting. So I do think there might be
That's
something to your theory that
that's
they forgot to put a star next to his name. But
it's yeah.
it's pretty blatant in the email. Not to go back to the email. We're talking about her
No,
emails here on
yeah.
the show.
No,
Um,
it's got a star and then next to the name.
yeah,
Yeah, and Kalia
Kalia
Davis has one,
Davis.
Elijah Mitchell doesn't.
Right. Okay. Well,
It's just like you could have put him on IR at any point. I know it's you do the cut down, but like if he wasn't designated to return, why wouldn't you just do that with Feliciano? And
you were
then
you told me that he had practiced.
I saw him.
He practiced?
Yeah.
That makes it even weirder. That
It's
makes it
very
even
weird.
weirder. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a level of weirdness, and I have a theory on this. It's not a very fun theory. It's not conspiratorial at all. But they did keep Patrick Taylor, running back previously of
Yeah.
the Packers, on the team. And I think that's got to be a special teams move
Yeah,
because they got rid of
100%.
Womack.
I think
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, go
I
ahead.
think what it is sticking on running back is like Jordan Mason is the number 2 now,
Mhm.
and you wanna take him off special teams a little bit, and so you do that with Patrick Taylor, and he can take over some of that burden, and yeah, you're right, Womack didn't make it either, and they cut, like, Ezekiel Turner and
Yeah.
Chase Lucas, guys who were, like, special teamers,
Jalen
so
Graham.
you need to think about that a little more.
Right. Okay. Two guys that I was surprised made the team. There's a couple here. Let's just start with the offensive side of things. I guess Taylor qualifies as one of them. But also John Feliciano and Ben Barch. The Barch thing isn't wildly surprising. I thought they would stick with Kingston over Barch. I guess they're going with experience over youth. And
No,
I
they
think
cut Ben Barch.
when did they cut Ben Barch?
They
Find him
cut
on the
Ben
list
Barch.
here.
He's on
Did
the
they cut
list.
him?
He's the first name on the list.
The first name on the list. Oh, there he is. He's gone.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ben Barch did
Everything's
not make the
going
team.
great. Everything's going great. Okay. Well, then they're definitely down one offensive lineman. This is a great stream so far. John Feliciano didn't get cut, though.
John Feliciano made it. So that one is why I was surprised again, besides skimming it, like that they wouldn't just put Feliciano on that designated for return situation. Like if Elijah Mitchell's just out for the year, like that's kind of wild to me.
Right.
So we'll see. Feliciano, he's got to go on IR if he's out for half the year. That just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, you could have
That's
PP'd him. Well, no, he's practiced. So
no PP. You got to like
practice for
start.
like 2 days. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. So Feliciano is going to go on IR for sure. I think they would do the same with Ambry Thomas. That opens you up to roster spots. Basically, they have a third. They basically have 3 players that they can gain 3 roster spots. You need to eventually have one for Trent Williams.
Right.
You're gonna, if Ayuk stays, then you cut Ronnie Bell or you cut Chris Conley. I would rather cut Ronnie Bell. But that he's subject to waivers and Conley isn't.
I cannot believe that Ronnie Bell made this team.
Yeah,
I guess it makes sense on the premise of you do not think at this point today, and that's the only point that we can talk about. They can't say today that Brandon Ayuk is playing in week 1. So you have to have a wide receiver to fill that spot. And they chose Ronnie Bell over Danny Gray and Tay Martin, Trent Taylor,
and Robbie Chosen. It's
okay.
And I think it's a matter of like, listen, he's a younger guy, waivers, like he's got a little bit of upside,
Yeah, he probably would have gotten another shot somewhere else. I mean, I don't think he's some guy you can sneak onto the practice squad.
Right. But eventually you've got him or Conley. You've got John Feliciano and then probably Ambry Thomas. That opens up like 3 roster spots. I'm surprised they cut Rock Ya-Sin. It's a veteran move. Yeah. He can go back on practice squad. I think you put Thomas on IR, bring him back. And that way you avoid, guaranteeing him the money right away from just making a roster. And then, you lose, you'll eventually cut one of the wide receivers and they're going to need to add another offensive lineman.
No doubt.
And I think they're going to need to add a tight end.
I can think of a really good offensive lineman they could add.
Who's that?
He wears 71. He might be the best offensive lineman in football. Pooney is going to be the start. They have 3 right guards on this roster right now. 2 of them they don't trust. One because of injury in Feliciano, the other one in Burford, who is injured, it should be noted,
Yeah.
but got Wally pipped by Dominic Pooney, who has been really like, listen, I hate to constantly impugn on the Poon, but like he's been really nice. He's been a wonderful surprise. I'm not sure he changes the overarching projectability of this offensive line at all. I think that he should be starting. I think he's the best right guard they have at this moment. I think that says more about Burford and Feliciano than it does about Pooney if I had to put it in one of those two camps. Zakelj makes the team. That doesn't surprise me given that I thought Zakelj, credit where it's due, had a really nice game against the Raiders on Friday, and they had been trying him out. He can play backup center. They don't mind him.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah. But they cut the Nuge. Not surprising.
Nope.
Still sad. Who else did they cut? They cut Cody Schrader. Again, not surprising. Still sad. Let's go to the defensive side. I'm stunned because this is a guy that we both really liked. You were onto him first. I was onto him second. I thought he had a wonderful game against the Raiders. I didn't think Sam Ekwonu was going to make the team. I think that speaks pretty loudly to what they've seen from Robert Beal, who was never going to get cut. And it speaks very loudly to the potential of serious injury to Yetur Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd, that Sam Ekwonu, who was the only guy that I would say outperformed expectations in camp, that he made the team. It was literally like anyone can do this. And Sam Ekwonu is the only one who stepped up and said, I can do this. Though shouts to Alex Barnett, Barrett, who I thought had a really nice camp and then had a really good preseason, couple pretty good preseason games. But the Niners have never treated that guy with respect, so why start now? But T.Y. McGill makes the team. Even after that deplorable performance in Tennessee, I guess he pulled it back out. So shouts to T.Y. McGill.
He did not make the team.
No, he didn't. What the hell? Oh, there he is. Cut right there. They have some serious roster spot issues here. They're going to have to add offensive and defensive linemen, and I'm going to have to get my eyes checked.
So quickly on Ekwonu.
Thank you.
91. He was a guy that, like, in training camp, I want to say relatively early on, I was like, oh, there's like a little something there. And you do that a lot with guys in training camp because you're there for a month, and the 49ers had like one of the most, especially this one, they had one of the most lackluster training camps I've ever seen from them. Just stunning. No Trent Williams, no Brandon Ayuk. Fred Warner doesn't have anyone to pick on. McCaffrey's out.
A pall. Everybody was just my attitude was generally like, well, the whole team's here, so why should we try hard? That was their energy from day one. And there were a couple days where you could tell Kyle kind of got on their ass and said, like, we have to have good practices. He needed to do that before every practice because they faded away at the end too.
Yeah, they had a good one yesterday. I was surprised they put on pads and they went after it. That was like a pretty good practice. Yeah. And Ekwonu, I will say, just shows up. You know, sometimes gets pressures on the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Solid in the run game. I'm not saying he's going to turn into anything.
No,
I'm just saying in terms of the guys they had, which was very, very little, he was the only one that flashed something. So it's nice. It's a nice little story that he made the team. That was sort of interesting to me. I still think, like Yetur Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd, it sounds like Gross-Matos has the worst injury. He's week to week compared to Floyd, who's day to day. That'll be something to monitor.
When did the Gross-Matos injury happen? Do you recall?
It happened in the same game. Same with
No.
Floyd.
I'm saying, do you remember when in the game?
No,
yeah, either do I.
Because I remember Greg Papa went, what? He's injured too?
Huh? Because we all saw what happened with Floyd. He got rolled into, but I didn't see it with Gross-Matos. So it's kind of stunning that that's the more serious injury. But they're both knee hyperextensions. That sounds good.
Yeah, sprained knees. So that's not ideal. So right now you're like, if they were to play tomorrow, it'd be like Robert Beal, Bosa, and Ekwonu. So that's
it's going great.
Nothing to worry about there. I will say Malik Collins looks sick.
You know, he had a couple of reps that were really well cut up on YouTube, and they were unbelievable reps.
Yeah.
All credit in the world. I did not get the impression watching that game back because deep sicko energy that Malik Collins actually had a tremendous amount of impact, save for the play where he threw two men out of the way to make a run stop. Truth be told, he
I
needs to do that a lot
I
more
didn't say
given this
I
run
didn't say
defense.
he was like reliably dominant. I'm just saying sometimes you see him do something. He's got a spin move that no defensive tackle has any business having. It's
That's right.
so fast. It's
No,
so powerful.
I really liked Collins's tape with the Texans. I'm still surprised that they let him go. I think it was just I don't even think it was a cost thing. I think that they thought they had more depth at that position than they did, and they figured do it a year early as opposed to a year too late. That's a big win for the Niners in getting Collins, but his backups are Givens, Elliott, and
That's it.
Givens and Elliott. I mean, if there's a defensive tackle that's looking for a job, you might want to be looking at short-term condo leases in the Santa Clara County area because I think the Niners are going to be adding one of those here. Also, can I note that the Niners kept 6 linebackers? Does that say anything to you other than, sorry, Jalen Graham, you're out?
Yeah, that was the position I had the hardest time with because you're talking like Curtis Robinson, Jalen Graham, Tatum Bethune, and our guy Larry kept talking to me about Tatum Bethune, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like you see flashes of these guys, unless you're
Yeah.
watching linebackers specifically, it's really hard to discern because you see some plays like D Winters was flying around the edges, playing with the starters, like he was good in coverage. Like I could see that, but
Yeah.
outside of that, when you get to the twos, it's hard to tell like whose responsibility it is in coverage and who's, like Jalen Graham hits hard. Um, I'm not totally surprised. He had, he was pretty inconsistent. I think
Yeah.
Bethune they think is pretty smart. He was super vocal. I remember one day he was playing Mike, and he
Mhm.
was the loudest guy I'd heard in practice. This was early on
He
ish
should
in
be playing.
camp.
That's
Yeah,
the only position you can play him at.
right. And so I think you got Warner, Campbell's the number 2, Winters the 3. That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Robinson, I think, played himself onto the roster in camp.
Yep.
Bethune, I think you think there's some upside there. He's smart. Flanagan Fowles is just a special teams guy that you know and are familiar with.
Right.
Keeping 6, I think, is like a luxury, as in, there were some other positions they didn't really need to keep guys. I'm
Right.
surprised they
But
I'm
didn't
not
they?
surprised they kept 6, but it's yeah, I don't know. Some of these decisions are a little weird, just the construction of it. Like,
Understanding, of course, that this is not the final roster, not just with
right.
Ayuk and Williams, but also with some salary cap maneuverabilities and funky business with IRs and things like that.
Yeah.
They kept Luter as a corner. That wasn't surprising. The fact that they did keep Thomas, at least today, was surprising. Womack and Rock Ya-Sin out. Chase Lucas is out too, but everyone expected that, especially after no one noticed him for the first 3 weeks of camp. You're like, oh, right, Chase Lucas is on this. They paid him money to come play football for them. Could have fooled me. Rock Ya-Sin, I thought, was really solid.
I
And
think
do you think
yeah.
he's the guy who comes in once they do something with Thomas? Or
I think he's like a 1-for-1 for Thomas, or they say we need another roster spot elsewhere
Hmm.
and we bump him up. But also like you're only going to have 5 corners active on game day. I think you probably put him on the active roster for Thomas. I just think like he earned a roster spot. Like he was solid.
Yeah.
He like knows how to play, and why subject him to practice squad where he could get swooped up eventually. Like
I mean,
his thing has been health, and I thought after that, OTA's hammy or whatever he had, he was healthy
mhm.
all of training camp for the most part. He looked
Got a lot
solid.
of reps.
So
Got a lot of reps.
yeah, like I'm not saying he was stellar, but like he was pretty solid and
Yeah.
knows how to stay tight, play through the ball without holding for the most part. I think you want him on this roster.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he was on the roster by the end of the week, but I wouldn't be surprised too if a bunch of other teams from around the NFL said, hey, we liked what we saw. You interested in coming and playing for us? Because not every team is in a position like the 49ers where they're loaded up at corner. And if Rock Ya-Sin
Right.
wants to get reps, he might want to go to a different team. So Niners,
It's true.
even if they have some agreement from Rock Ya-Sin, I'm not sure that agreement's going to hold up. But we'll see by the end of the week. Playing a bit of a dangerous game there. And then the news with safety is that Talanoa Hufanga effectively activated. So he's in. And Taylor Hawkins, Jalen Mahoney, Tracy Walker, in the words of Kenny Powers, you're fucking out. And not those are the 4 best corners on the team with Malik Mustafa, George Odom, Jair Brown, and Huff. Could be better, could be worse, but I think if Huff can go week 1, they got to feel pretty good about the depth at those 2 positions, which are being used rather interchangeably from what we can tell in practice.
I don't think he's going to be ready to go week 1. I just have a hard time seeing that. What do we got? We've got less than 2 weeks before the Jets, and he hasn't practiced a single time. Maybe he practices these next few days and he looks good. But I don't know. I think that's more of like they think he's going to be ready week 2 or 3, and you can get him out there. But maybe I'm wrong. And he's ready week 1. But I think that's something with. They were like, we're going to have to get him back anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well do it now. It'll be 2-3 weeks rather than, week 5.
So they could have kept him on PUP the way that they did with Dre Greenlaw, but then he's going to miss at least the first month of the season. So with the fact that he's back and practicing, I mean, not practicing, but he's healthy. They say he can. I would venture to say that 4 weeks from 2 weeks from now is 6 weeks is probably too long of a time frame, especially when you consider there's a game against the Rams in there. And okay, you're taking the hit on Monday Night Football, but it's also an extra day, and who knows? That might be enough to feel like you get him reps.
That's a question. That's something I've been thinking about. Is Monday Night Football? Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
Aaron Rodgers.
Just in general, I've been thinking about it too. It's the first game on the schedule.
Let me get there. There. I'm building up for dramatic effect.
Okay. Should I start playing some music?
Yes. Probably. We should cut it. Aaron Rodgers loves to target players who are either not good at their positions or young or. But he really likes to go after young players. And so what I'm sort of thinking about is if you're the 49ers, like let's look at like outside corner and safety. And Isaac Yiadom versus Renardo Green. I wonder, Yiadom was back in one-on-ones yesterday, not fully back in practice. I wonder, do they start Yiadom week 1, even if their intention is to start Green later, solely because of it's a rookie thing, and they know Yiadom has been in the league for a while and can handle it? And the same at safety. Do they go, all right, we're going to play Odom, alongside Jair, and then we're going to leave it open for Hufanga to come back and Mustafa.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to put a rookie out there week 1. I'm just interested to see how they handle that. And not that I have to see it from Aaron Rodgers to see if he can do anything. 40-year-old man coming off an Achilles injury. But he does recognize stuff that in the scouting report, you go, let's see what that rookie can do day 1, Monday Night Football, very bright lights. He's going to target them, and I wonder if the 49ers say, we're not going to deal with that week 1. Week 2, maybe. But I'm interested to see how they handle that.
Well, I'll say this for Odom, and I've mentioned this before, as concerning as it felt going into OTAs and like this, really, you're going to go with George Odom? Again, I repeat it because it needs to be repeated. They signed a dude off a Disney cruise before they let this guy play safety last year. There's no further elaboration needed. They did everything in their power to not let George Odom play safety. I'm not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but George Odom has looked good at safety in practice. Yeah. He's organized. He's smart. He might not be the most athletically gifted, but he looks a little lighter than what I remember. It seemed as if he always sort of had a linebacker body. Previously, he looks thinner, and I think he can move around a lot more. And in a cover 3 system, I think he's a nice fit. I'm not saying that he's going to outplay Huff. I'm not saying that he's going to hold off Mustafa, but they got 3 pretty good options at strong safety in week 1, all of them flawed in their own way. Obviously, Huff coming off an injury, Mustafa having not played in the NFL before, and Odom just not being an elite player by any stretch of the imagination, sort of being a guy who has the job by default or had the job by default. But it should be noted, I mean, you get Garrett Wilson in week 1. Aaron Rodgers is going to go out there trying to prove something. You have to keep Breece Hall contained. Tyron Smith has looked pretty good at left tackle. Morgan Moses is out there. I mean, the Jets have a chance. I know a lot of people are bullish on them, and I hate to knock you down, though you are a Jets fan in your past life, so you know all about getting knocked down. I'm just saying, I think if you look at the roster, there's a lot of people out there who go, the Jets might do something. I'm not all the way there, but they're certainly going to look a lot better than they did last year because, they won't have Tim Boyle playing quarterback and Zach Wilson playing quarterback. And there's a lot of talent on this team. So it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough test.
Yep.
And at this point, they are now full on preparing for the New York Jets, which where does the summer go, ladies and gentlemen? Let's get to a couple questions here. Real Team Me, what's the last day to sign without problems? I presume this is regarding both Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk. I'll start with Ayuk if you want to take Williams. Ayuk, that day was yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. I think we've entered the problem area when it comes to Ayuk because I don't know what he is doing when it comes to conditioning and staying up to speed. And my expectation is that because he is holding in and, let's be real, faking an injury as to facilitate the hold in, that it hasn't been as much as maybe he should be doing. And when that is the case, I can't expect, even if Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers come to an agreement tomorrow, whether that agreement be you are now a super, super rich man or you're going to play on your 5th-year option. But if Brandon Ayuk practices tomorrow, I still don't feel confident that means he can take 100% of the snaps at X receiver against Sauce Gardner in week 1. And every day that moves forward, knock off another 5 to 10% of those snaps. So that's an issue. As for Williams, I mean, I think you and I are on the same page here.
Yeah. So, I'm with you on Ayuk. I think if they were to get a deal done tomorrow, okay, fine. Like, crisis mostly averted.
Play 65, 70% of the snaps. You get in some Pearsall, you get in some Conley, you get in some Cowing. You can figure it out.
Question. I think you can figure that out. I'm not. That thing. I don't know. It could linger for weeks. I don't know what the resolution to that is. I think the CeeDee Lamb deal does not help.
Yeah. Not for the 49ers. It certainly helps Brandon Ayuk.
It's a stupid amount of money that if I was the Cowboys, I know this is like a crazy hot take, but I'm just going to go there. I would have just fully rebuilt because you're not winning it.
Yeah.
You're not winning it with that group.
There's a lot of chatter right now that Micah Parsons might get traded.
That's
a lot of
crazy.
Chatter.
I mean,
choosing the slot receiver over the defensive end.
And I'm not even saying this just because it's fun to rip on the Cowboys and their fans like have a hard time with any criticism, which is fair because
fair enough.
But like they don't add. Jerry Jones doesn't add in free agency. Like he just doesn't.
They can't afford to. They can't afford to add. They got Eric Kendricks.
They still good for them. It's just like they didn't upgrade and they haven't been there. And I am just never. People like rave about Dak, and I think Dak is a solid quarterback, but I just don't think he's ever going to get them there.
He'll get you to the playoffs.
He'll get you to the playoffs, but like, go win a game. I'm just,
it's a thought.
Anyway,
Trent Williams. Are we at a point because you and I have both been of the mindset of like, well, Trent's taking care of himself. He's ready to go. He just doesn't want to show up to training camp because he barely practices during training camp anyway. And why stand out in the California sun when you can stand in the sun in Houston and get a good sweat in? Are we now at a point, though, where you're like, he's going to actually have to play some football. He's going to have to practice a little bit just before the season starts because I'm starting to feel like we might be at that juncture. Maybe not today, but by Friday.
He's got, I'm saying like a Labor Day a week. You get in 3 full days of practice with Trent Williams.
Good to go.
And maybe, honestly, you give him a couple snaps off in the game with Jalen Moore. Like, that's not the craziest thing. Because honestly,
I know a good way to do that. You bring him around. He's your third tight end. You bring him in the way that they did in Lambeau Field, where he's an eligible receiver, and you bring him in on trap plays and end arounds and all this stuff. And then he has to take the next play off because you can't have the guy stay in as an eligible receiver on back-to-back plays. That is a way to give him snaps off.
It's great. I love that. I think he has to practice, let's say, Thursday of next week. That is the 5th.
Yeah,
Thursday, Friday, when they have Saturday. That's when they have their only real practice of the day.
Yeah.
Actually, no. It'd be Friday. It would be Friday because it's a Monday night game. So Friday would be their usual Thursday practice. Friday of next week. If he's not
Yeah.
practicing by Friday of next week, that's like their one true practice of the week for the Jets. Then you're like, all right, we're starting Jalen Moore week 1. Definitively to me.
Yeah.
That's a problem that I don't and I do like the reporting. I think Josina Anderson and your guy from
Jeremy
ESPN, Jeremy
Yep.
Fowler, basically have been like, Trent isn't playing. Like, he
Right.
will sit out.
It's-
It's basically a message from Trent to the 49ers that you have been saying the whole time. We've both been saying, like,
Yes.
Trent Williams isn't
Does not
bluffing.
fuck around. He
And
does not
and I
fuck
know there's been like some dialogue about not about him bluffing, but about like, oh, like he just wants his money, he's being selfish.
Yes.
It's the NFL. So yes, it's a gladiator sport where you're literally doing damage to yourself long term. So yeah, you should get paid very, very well. And Trent has no guaranteed money left. And he
Right.
knows next offseason, 49ers care about no one other than Brock Purdy. You know why? Because they keep saying we're going to pay Brock Purdy a lot of money.
That's right.
And so Trent's going, you're not going to take care of me next offseason.
Right.
I got nothing guaranteed for the next 3 years.
Mhm.
You want me? Lock me up now. And good. We'll ride for at least the next couple seasons.
Yeah.
I'll be good. But if you don't do that, I'm good. And he's dead serious.
This man has never bluffed once in his life. 2 things to note about, well, I guess 3. 1, the man has beaten cancer. He's been to the other side and come back. This man ain't bluffing. He knows there's more to life than football. He doesn't need football for his identity or anything like that. His Hall of Fame jacket is secure. Beyond that, he has made more money than any offensive lineman in the history of the NFL. And I know that Trent does like to, get on the jet and he spends a little bit. I don't think he can spend all that money, right? Like, I don't think that there's any financial repercussions long term for Trent Williams not getting what he's getting paid now. They have done this before with Trent Williams. The contract that he is currently on was negotiated strictly on the basis of, you will make me the highest paid offensive lineman in football. And the 49ers said, yes, sir. By the way,
they almost let him go to the Chiefs. And then Kyle went, what the fuck are we doing? Get him signed now. We're not doing this.
Right. You noted that they have to do it this offseason. I mean, you don't think Christian McCaffrey did the same thing? And it's interesting. And again, different amounts of money, about $10 million if we're just doing the napkin math here and difference. The 49ers have more cap room than anyone else in the NFL as of right now. But they're also, I think, 30 or 50 million. They're well over the cap next year.
Yeah.
Already.
It's like 30 something. And whatever they do, it's going to create, when they sign Ayuk and Trent, they're going to have more. So they're going to carry over. Right. If they do those deals, they'd carry over like 50 plus next year.
And I mean, let's be clear about this. You can say, oh, well, they could backload Purdy's contract. Well, not enough. I mean, that's coming on the books too. It's not as if he's playing on the 5th year and then the extension kicks in. No, he goes from like $1.6 million to 40 at the lowest. So that's on the books too.
They'll probably do it like 20 and then bump it up. But like, you're right. Like, it's not going to it's going to hit. It's going to
hit by a factor of 20x, so, and that's the best case scenario. So Trent is 100% correct. And you got to take care of me now. I think Ayuk understands the same premise of, hey, the money is going to be better today here than it will be after this season, which is why I wrote yesterday, like the CeeDee Lamb contract, that means Ayuk's gone. He'll play this season because he doesn't have the power to not play this season. It's in his best interest to play well this season, the same way it's in Deebo Samuel's best interest to play well. And then the Niners will franchise tag Ayuk at the end of the season and get in a trade exactly what they could get for him today. So they get to have their cake and then I guess eat it too, if this is considered cake, a second and a fourth or something to that effect. It's not great. It's not ideal. And kind of looking at this roster, Jake, it is so top heavy still. And that's even with a couple of draft picks that I think we all agree we like in Pearsall and Coway.
They've had a great draft.
Yeah, I think they did. I mean,
Well, I mean,
to
we
be
haven't played a
determined.
single game. We haven't
Yeah.
played a single game, but
But
it looks
we feel more optimistic about this year's draft class after camp than I think we have about any draft class of the last couple of years. And this is sort of something that I've been toying around with, and I'll just drop it right here. The Trey Lance deal has set them so far back in terms of just roster depth because they drafted like shit for 2 years after, and they didn't have first round picks until this season. They obviously missed on Lance. That in and of itself is a calamity. They got away with it. But like the 2022 draft, they have one player, Brock Purdy. That's it. It's just like the one guy that they can say is good from that class. They just cut their third round pick from last year in Cam Latu. They, for some reason, kept around Ambry Thomas, another third round pick. I mean, they're in it here a little bit. And a lot of the guys who got drafted this year and a lot of guys that they picked up as undrafted, like Robert Beal has a huge responsibility on his shoulders. He's not ready for it, Jake. He's not
I was
ready
watching Nick Bosa coach him up in practice the other day because Beal pulled a move and Bosa's like, no. Do it here. Here's how you set it up. Where he literally throughout the entirety of practice was like speaking to Beal like, no, this is, you do this. This is where my hand placement is. This is how you get there. Because he's like, this might be the guy I need to rely on next to me. And I needed a little bit of help. Like, Rob, you're going to have to win a couple.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get chipped and double teamed. So I need some help. But it was like both an exercise in leadership from Bosa that was interesting because he's also known how to rush the passer since he came out of the womb. And
I saw him as an 8th grader in South Florida.
Oh yeah.
None of this is new.
Yeah, incredible. But also like not a lot of depth. So going back to let me go back to this
Let's
one.
go back to Tonjes because you know what? As much as you and I naturally are pessimists, and as much as today has been bizarre and to be determined kind of what it all means, it should be a celebration of Jake Tonjes. He not only got a job, he moved up on the depth chart to number 2 in the course of a day.
He beat out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys.
They cut 5 tight ends and kept Tonjes. They cut
5 tight ends for George Kittle and Jake Tonjes, which is wild. So here, it's pretty incredible because you rarely get that, especially on this team. What I saw from Tonjes, again, a guy not on our radar at the start. Tonjes is a guy that every time the ball has been thrown to him, he catches it every single time.
When he motions, that's a prerequisite, but for these other guys,
you would think that's not. But like he's long, he's got good size, he catches every ball that goes to him, and he's not like a crazy athlete, but he can run after the catch a little bit. He's a little physical. Yep. As a blocker, in terms of shifts, he does it right every time. And when he blocks, he does it well. Like I'm not saying I'm seeing him pancaking guys, but the amount of times I've seen like Willis go one way or Cam Latu like lose somebody and just he's doing it right every time. And when you just do things right consistently and they look around and it's a bunch of guys stumbling over themselves, except for Saubert, who was surprised by, might still be back. Yeah. Tonjes just did everything right. And he's young, he's got good size, seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. They could not in good faith keep him off this roster.
No, not after the distinction was made on Willis. The Saubert thing, again, I would just have a hard time imagining that they don't bring him back. I suppose that they think that I don't see the mechanism, right? I don't understand the mechanism. I'm not going to think too hard about it either as to why they would bother to knock him off and then bring him back. Maybe they just don't want to pay him as much or whatever, but he's a really, really good blocking tight end. Yep. And it's something this team is going to need. As much as Brock Purdy wants to spread it out and air it out, this is still a team that particularly in November and December should be fundamentally about running the football. And also it's an offensive line that is built specifically to run the football. That's with or without Trent Williams. They should not be passing if they don't have to, given the pass protection capabilities of this offensive line.
And by the way, he made a sick one-handed catch to end practice yesterday. Like
Yeah.
like a crazy ball, like tight coverage one-handed. I'm just saying, like, I've seen worse. He's not a good receiving tight end, but I've seen
No.
worse. Like, he's got decent hands.
They kept
Yeah.
Ronnie Bell on the team, who drops 5 balls of practice. So clearly it's not about that.
I will say Ronnie Bell will have a day where you're like, "Oof, he's cut." And then there's another day where you're like, "Oh, Ronnie Bell's all over the place." Like,
Yeah.
but that's the thing is, like, you want it here, and he was doing this.
Yeah.
As the Dolphins, I think it was Ireland, former Hard Knocks
Jeff Ireland,
GM.
the former
Yes.
GM of the Dolphins.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
when
covered him.
when they were talking about when they traded Vontae Davis, they're like,
Yeah.
"Vontae, you're here, we need you here."
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, Ronnie Bell might be out anyway,
Yeah.
given how this thing goes down. Just to reiterate, the Feliciano thing I find strange. He hasn't practiced in weeks. Kyle basically said they were going to IR designate him a couple days ago. Then
Yeah,
they just didn't.
I'm really struggling with the Elijah Mitchell thing. It's very odd.
You
You
know
know?
what? It's not that odd. I think that they probably wanted to cut him. And then they said, well, we can't just cut him because then he'll get healthy in 2 months and then the Rams will sign him or somebody. And then we'll have to see Elijah Mitchell again. And because he's constantly injured, we can just IR him. And is it mean and probably not conducive to the player? Sure. But like, we got to look out for number one here. And if we can't trust him, but we also can't cut him because he's too good of a running back, and we don't want somebody else because we have to make a decision today. We don't want somebody else to benefit off of the tough decision we make today. So let's just push this forward to next season, in which Elijah Mitchell will not be on this team. I mean, he just
It's
won't.
pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal because, well, I
That's
wonder
a
if
guess. I haven't heard that firsthand or anything. That's just my guess.
like, I do wonder if he's like, "No, I'm healthy. I want out. Like, cut me."
He can't make that claim, though. No one, that will never hold up in a court of law.
I'm just saying, like, this is a chance, like, he gets to be a free agent next year. Now he has nothing on tape for this season.
Yeah.
I guess you can just spend this year and get healthy. I don't know how that works, but
It's a ruthless, thankless job running back in the NFL because, yeah. But you know what?
Yeah.
The Patrick Taylor thing does make more sense when you kind of break it down. Schrader didn't show enough on special teams.
they like
Burrito-
Garendo.
You got Garendo as your kick returner. You feel good about that. Schrader, Burrito wasn't going to do anything for you there. Keyshawn Vaughn wasn't going to do anything for that. You need a gunner. You need somebody who can, get down the field on kick. Like Patrick Taylor's a big back. And worst case scenario for the 49ers is, okay, it's Jordan Mason and Isaac Garendo. You might actually want Patrick Taylor near the goal line every now and again. You don't want this guy in the open field making, outside zone cuts. But if you need someone to go in there, hold on to the ball, and run a motherfucker over, like Patrick Taylor can reasonably do that. I've liked what I've seen from him in camp. I've just consistently looked at other players and said, well, I like 4 or 5 guys more than him. But he looks like an NFL caliber running back, just in the same way Breida and Keyshawn Vaughn did. But you just go, nature of the beast. Everyone kind of looks good in this scheme. And there's more running backs than you know what to do with. And, that's incredible. Christian McCaffrey got paid, frankly.
I know. What I was going to ask you is, like, think about, if the NFL, just how ruthless the NFL is. Elijah Mitchell, like, if he were to be a free agent after his rookie year, after running for like 982 yards.
That's right.
So ruthless.
Well, it's on the 49ers, frankly, for not capitalizing on the situation that they had. And I get why they didn't do it. And I'm not saying they were wrong to not do it. But for several years now, I've been advocating trading him away because you could still get some value for him, and that he was just generally untrustworthy. Every time he'd come back, he'd get injured again. I mean, it became legitimately something. It was a laughing matter for a lot of people around the 49ers. It's just like, it was just incredible how frequently this guy would get injured. And if you could have gotten anything for him, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if anyone would have ever given anything.
I mean, they got a 5th for Matt Breida back in the day that turned into Colt McKivitz.
It's been a minute now. And there's been a lot more running backs coming in from the college level. Going along the lines of what I was saying earlier with the depth in the draft, Let's pull up this one instead from Giannis. It's interesting that the three positions where I would say they're deepest, which is corner, running back, and wide receiver, right? Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's fair.
Those are the three positions that I would argue the college game produces in its most abundance. Those are the three positions that you would say the 49ers have benefited, maybe not by drafting well, but by just winning the lottery a couple of times, because there's so many good college wide receivers. We've seen what all the good college running backs have done to the running back market. And I think corner, as dire of a situation as it had been for the Niners year after year, you look at the corners coming out. I mean, they're so good. The college corners coming out are so good. You can get guys in the third, fourth round that can start for you in week one, given the right situation. I think it only highlights further how poorly this team has drafted over the last couple of years, with this year being still undetermined, and how far set back they are, in that they could have really used a first round caliber player or whatever picks in addition they could have gotten for a first round pick, right? If you trade down, now you're getting 2 bites at the apple or 3 bites at the apple instead of 1. They could have really used that depth on this roster right now. They don't even have the quarterback that they got as the depth. I guess they got a fourth or fifth round pick for him. I can't recall. Fourth, fifth? Do you remember what they got for Trey Lance?
Fourth
round pick. Do you know who they took with that fourth round pick?
I want to say, it used to get Garendo?
It was 197.
Might have been used to get Garendo. They didn't pick anyone with it.
Yeah,
when they traded up.
Regardless, so they got somebody this year for him. That's almost a 1-to-1. But to not have the first round picks, and they probably would have botched it, whatever. But this is really, really boom or bust again this season. And I would argue that this season they have a little bit more depth than they did last year, but not in the places where they really need it. Like, they don't need a Jacob Cowing on this team, right? They don't need let's just use an example, a Renardo Green on this team. They don't need it. Those are picks for down the line. Those are picks for 2025 and beyond. What they need is 2 guys for the middle on the defensive line, a guy who can play tackle. I mean, of all the options they had available to him at tackle and 31, as much as we're Pearsall guys and thought that was the right pick, like,
yeah,
what would they do for a Kingsley Suamataia right now? What would they do?
Oh, they used the Trey Lance pick on Mustafa.
Okay, well, you're never going to complain about that. But also, Do they need Malik Mustafa on this team?
Maybe,
right?
yes.
George Odom's looked good and Huff is back. Like, is Malik Mustafa a free safety? I think he's a strong safety. And he's third on the depth chart at strong safety. Just saying, this is a pretty boom or bust team, and we're already seeing the injuries start to show the cracks in the foundation with Floyd and Gross Matos. We've certainly seen it on the offensive line with Trent Williams holding out. And as good as Purdy is, he's going to have to take it to a whole other level this year, because this is why it's a head coach and quarterback league. It doesn't matter who's around them. If you have the head coach and the quarterback, you have a chance. And I think the 49ers feel very good about that. I don't think they have any reason to not feel good about that. But Brock Purdy's got to take his game to another level. He's going to have to earn every bit of that $60 million contract this season, because as talented as they are on the top end, by the time we get to Halloween, by the time we get to Thanksgiving, we got to be real. In a game of attrition, a lot of that talent, or at least some of that talent, is going to come off the books. And they don't have guys on this roster to reasonably replace them to anything like a replacement level. And that means
like if George Kittle goes down, like, as much as we talked up Jake Tonjes, I mean,
you can't do it.
No.
And by the way, now you have no replacement for Tonjes. That's a great example. Congratulations. Now Jake Tonjes is getting 60 snaps a game. That's not viable. You can't run your offense like that.
Yeah. I share your concerns. Again, this is still, like, if they get Ayuk and Trent back, it's still going to be hard for them not to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I'm really, mostly what I'm looking forward to, and I think this is kind of a good spot to put a pin in this until we talk to John Lynch tomorrow.
Important.
John Lynch is going to be real squeamish tomorrow. He's going to get asked plenty of questions that he will say, I'm not talking about Ayuk. I'm not talking about Trent. We're going to go, we don't care. We're going to keep asking, John, because it's August 28th and neither one of them is practicing.
Right.
And you got to do something. And he's not going to say much, but is it like we would love to pay them more, but Jed York has said,
No, you know what? I'm going to clap back on that. I think this is the 49ers. Tim Kawakami has thrown out this theory that the 49ers don't want to lose in negotiations. I don't think they've ever wanted to lose in negotiations. I think that this notion that Bosa ran them over last year is a bit of apples to oranges. Like, they'll get the Trent deal done. Okay. It'll get done. They have no choice but to get it done. You have to write a blank check for that guy. Their season's over before it starts if Trent Williams doesn't show up. Full stop. So that will get done. And the timing is not of concern at this moment, as we talked about earlier. With the Ayuk thing, I think it's strictly the market exploded beyond anyone's reasonable expectation. It exploded again yesterday with CeeDee Lamb's new contract. And the 49ers are looking down the pipeline at some very difficult decisions as it pertains to the salary cap. They're already on the books for top-of-the-line players in Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, Trent soon enough, Nick Bosa, obviously, and then soon Brock Purdy. Okay, so and by the way, Hargrave as well, whose contract is about to explode. So good luck with that. You're going to have to either eat it at like $18 million a year or continue to play. I'm not sure it's worth it. I would just keep playing the guy. I don't know. I don't know how that one goes down, but it's another one where they were just spending willy-nilly, like the Eddie D era was back because they had a $1 million quarterback, and now they got to pay the piper a little bit. And the issue is Brandon Ayuk wants to be paid like a top-of-the-line wide receiver, and as he should want to be paid. And the 49ers are going, you're not a top-of-the-line wide receiver. You're not in that class. And we're not going to keep up with the market so that you feel like we're just not going to do it. We can't do it. There's got to be a line somewhere, and that line has been passed by $5 million twice this offseason. So they just say they can't do it. And
it's also a spot where if the 49ers negotiated like other teams where they saw like, the Waddle stuff, and if they just said, all right, we'll match that right now, match that, that's the deal. They could have had Ayuk for a much more reasonable figure, but they do this thing.
I don't know when it broke down, but there is.
I mean,
I believe Ayuk said that they had a deal done, and then it got called off at the last second. I'm not sure who's responsible for that, but again, when the Waddle contract comes in where it does, when Amon-Ra St. Brown comes in where it does, and now where CeeDee Lamb comes in, and by the way, Jamar Chase is going to go to another level on top of that. If the Bengals are smart and sign him, because he is an unquestionably elite wide receiver. When you think about Ayuk, how much of it is the system? How much of it is Ayuk? Obviously, Ayuk deserves a ton of credit for being an outstanding player, but there's a difference between outstanding and top of the line. And I just think that the 49ers have looked at their scenario and said to themselves, we cannot pay top of the market dollars to someone who isn't a top of the market player, especially when that market just keeps exploding and exploding and exploding. Our man Giannis coming in the comments. I keep saying the Trent's going to get done. It has not been done. Yeah, well, we're not on. I mean, we got until the 8th of September. And frankly, it might not get, let's be clear, it might not get done. The 49ers might be idiots. And we'll call them that every day. Once we get to, Thursday before the game? We'll call them idiots every day for not getting it done until they get it done. We can maybe even get a little taste of it right now. They're being idiots. Just pay the man his money. It is a big difference between the Williams and the Ayuk situation because, again, Trent Williams has all the leverage because Trent Williams will not show up. He will retire before he plays for something less than what he feels he's worth, and he can afford to do that. Brandon Ayuk has not been paid serious money yet in his NFL career.
I will say we've criticized Ayuk plenty for how he's handled it, but the amount of stubbornness he's showed is commendable.
Yeah.
And he's just going, pay me.
I'll give him
Come
that.
on, do it.
And you know what? Truth be told, I'm not angry at him for not signing anything. If he,
I would never be
frankly,
angry at a player for trying to get paid.
no,
Eh,
especially knowing the nature of the game and knowing the business. The market says that Brandon Ayuk is worth well more than the 49ers are willing to pay him. They found that out a couple weeks ago when the New England Patriots offered him $32 million a year. But I can't blame the 49ers for not paying Brandon Ayuk almost $10 million more than they were going to pay him in April.
Yeah.
What's changed? What's changed for him? Is he a different player?
Paying him Nick Bosa money.
Right. Because there is a fundamental issue in play when you pay a player that much money, right? You have to have complete buy-in from the locker room. And Brandon Ayuk cannot, in good conscience, say, and no one in that locker room can reasonably say that he's the best wide receiver on the team right now. Some people can say it, but I can easily say Deebo Samuel. And you go, oh, yeah, Deebo was pretty fucking sick. He is still pretty fucking good. Like, you can do that. The fact that you cannot say that he's the best offensive player on the team because Christian McCaffrey is. And then maybe it's Deebo. And then maybe it's George Kittle. Oh, and then maybe it's Trent Williams. But you can pay those guys top minds because when you say who's the best tight end in football, you have to put George Kittle in that conversation. When you say who's the best running back in football, you have to put Christian McCaffrey in that conversation. Best left tackle in football, you have to say Trent Williams. There's no other option. Sorry, it's Trent Williams. Who's the best middle linebacker in football? It's Fred Warner. Who's the best defensive end? There's a lot of people in there, but Nick Bosa is part of the conversation. And you say who's the best wide receiver? Are you at what, 10, 11, or 12 before you get to Brandon Ayuk?
He's top 10, in my opinion.
Okay. Where is he on that? I mean, it's like 9, 8.
No, you're right. No, listen, that's the point. I don't want to belabor it anymore.
Yeah.
But that is like a fundamental, like, really, we're going to pay him more than all these guys who are top of their position, but that's what the market's dictating. I would also say, like, again, Ayuk is like the only one that can separate on this team. Maybe Pearsall, but like he's the only one that can beat man, and Deebo can't. We know that, and that's a fundamental problem with his offense that cost him in the Super Bowl. And I think you can function without that a little bit, especially if Pearsall shows up. But it's a problem, and that's what Ayuk is saying.
But here's the thing: Brandon Ayuk has to play this year, whether he has a new contract or not.
Correct, and that's not me. That's me saying the 49ers could just force him to play on the 5th-year option. So see how that plays out. I think to close, Jake Tonjes.
Good for him.
Jake Tonjes.
I mean, yeah, I'm with you on that. Sam Aquanu as well. Hooray for Sam Aquanu.
Stonks, baby.
Anybody else that we want to talk about, in terms of where they fit on the roster, how this is going to go down? How about a little Renardo Greenlove? I mean,
yeah,
he was always going to make the team. He's on scholarship. He's a second year, a second round pick, all that. But like Renardo Green just rocketing up the depth chart, taking advantage of every opportunity he's been given. Looks like a stud.
I'm with you. I think it's going to be interesting to see if they start him or Yadam week 1. Because I think either way, by the end of the year, that's probably Green's job.
One final question for you here, Jake. Who's the player they cut today that they're going to most regret having cut?
Ooh, this is a very good question.
Because there's layers to it, right? There's
because it really is like, we didn't even talk about it. They cut Jarrett Kingston today.
That's where I was going.
I'm not. He's subject to waivers. I suspect they think he's going to make it, but like that's an interesting thing to say. All right, keep 6.
Keep Feliciano. But
6 linebackers. Keeping Feliciano on the roster and subjecting. You got no offensive line depth. Kingston could theoretically move in at right tackle for you in a pinch. Like that one, I think
they said they don't like him at tackle, but I'm with you.
The biggest surprise to me. You look at the rest of the list, I go, Jarrett Kingston, Jalen Graham, it's whatever. They've got a bunch of linebackers. They were all in the same boat to me.
Right.
But Kingston was the surprise to me, and Eric Saubert. Him and Saubert, and Rock Ya-Sin. Those are the 3 guys that I was shocked by. Yeah. And listen, like, I guess you got Zakel as your backup center, but I don't know, man. Like your interior offensive line, you had like some intriguing options, and now it's Feliciano's going to be out, Zakel and Burford, and that's it.
Yeah,
and that's
you could
sure,
do worse
don't
than
need
Burford. To be fair, you could do worse.
Yeah,
than Burford.
Burford. Yeah, is fine. But I'm just saying, you drafted Kingston. Like I don't want to say he looked stellar, but like I didn't see him making a ton of mistakes. I mean,
No.
for a rookie,
I thought he got
Yeah.
better. I thought it got
I was
better.
surprised. That's the biggest surprise by me, that they could regret, because he's subject to waivers. At least the other two guys, you can have like an agreement in place and bring them back. Kingston surprised me.
The thing with waivers is that you have to put them on the 53 if you pick them up. So
Correct.
Yeah, the Kingston
I'm just
one's
saying
there.
that Arizona Cardinals picked up players worse than him last year. They just scooped a bunch of them up.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are teams in that position. I think the answer is the Nuge. I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Nuge got picked up. It's a tough sell because he is a backup center, and not a lot of teams carry a true backup center.
Yeah.
He can't really play guard. But if he ends up on a different team, I think that could end up looking really, really
Eagles?
dumb. I mean, I don't know. I haven't gone through all the machinations yet.
He's a guy who, listen, can't really anchor, but man, in the run game, and I just think he'd get better.
If I'm a team out there and I got a position to play with, you could do worse. And there's a lot of upside down the line if you get him in, to your camp, do some NFL coaching with him. I think the Niners, if he ends up on a different team, might really regret it, because I think he's got 5 years of starting in him at a pretty good level down the line. I think he's a special player. And I can't believe I'm not saying that about Cody Schrader, and we wish him best of luck in all of his endeavors. We will always remember this training camp. All right, Jake.
That's right.
I don't know, what Friday? Do something on Friday?
Maybe Thursday. We'll see.
Thursday. Sure. We got John Lynch tomorrow. That should be fascinating. Squirmy and fascinating. Looking forward to talking to you all on the other side. Thanks for everybody for chipping in, all you sickos. We will have resolution on this soon, I promise. All right. Until then, adios.